All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We're looking at Section 18, Deployment. You know the drill. You've been working super hard on your code, spending hours getting everything running perfectly on your own local machine. But eventually, you hit a critical wall. That famous developer excuse, well, it works on my machine, just isn't going to cut it anymore. You need the rest of the world to see it. So today, we are tackling the crucial final frontier of development, deployment. It can definitely feel like a daunting leap, moving from a local host environment to a live URL. But we're going to map out the exact step-by-step journey your code needs to take to actually get there.
So, what exactly is deployment? Before we even look at specific tools or platforms, we really have to start with this fundamental question. Think of it as an exciting journey for your code. It's basically the necessary bridge between a project that's just sitting safely on your hard drive and a live, breathing application that users across the globe can interact with. It's the process of pushing your creation out into the wild, live internet. Without deployment, your code is just a local secret, but with it, it becomes a global product.
Right, so that brings us to phase 1, getting ready. Think of it kind of like prepping your ingredients before cooking a massive dinner for your friends. You can't just take raw, unfinished development code, throw it onto a server somewhere, and expect it to work flawlessly for thousands of users. This phase is the absolute mandatory preparation you've got to complete before any code goes out the door. It is the groundwork that ensures your app doesn't immediately crash the second a real user clicks a button.
And this prep naturally breaks down into 2 consecutive steps. Step 1 is the build process. This is where your raw, developer-friendly code, maybe you're using a framework like React, Vue, or TypeScript, gets compiled and bundled down into standard, web-ready HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Because, the browser doesn't understand your fancy developer frameworks. It just wants the basics. So the build process translates it. Then, right after that, we hit step 2, production optimization. This means taking those newly built files and shrinking them down. We're talking minifying your JavaScript, stripping out unnecessary comments, and compressing images. You absolutely want lightning-fast performance for your end users in a production environment. So it's a super precise sequence. Translate the code so the browser can read it, then shrink it so the browser can load it instantly.
Okay, so your code is built, it's perfectly optimized for production, it is primed and ready for the world. But where does it actually live? Every great piece of software needs a reliable home on the web. A server somewhere out there has to hold your files and serve them up the exact second someone types in your URL. So let's step up the complexity escalator a bit, move away from just prepping our code locally, and look at the actual hosting solutions that define the modern web.
Moving right along into phase 2, the modern platforms. This represents a massive shift in how developers handle hosting today. A decade ago, getting a simple site online meant wrestling with server configurations and manual FTP uploads, which was awful. Now we're looking at platforms designed to make getting your optimized code onto the internet as painless and streamlined as possible. Seriously, often the entire deployment process is reduced to a single click, or literally just pushing your code to a GitHub repo.
When you just want your site up and running quickly without the headache of managing the underlying servers yourself, you turn to modern platform-as-a-service solutions. And the absolute giants in this space right now are Vercel, Netlify, and Cloudflare Pages. These are incredibly accessible, out-of-the-box platforms. They handle all the heavy lifting of global distribution, managing SSL certificates so your site is secure, and they even give you instant rollbacks if you accidentally push a bug. They're built to let you focus purely on writing code while they handle everything else running in the background.
Now, looking at them side by side, you might choose one over the other depending on your project's specific needs. Like maybe you lean toward Vercel if you're heavily invested in the Next.js framework. Or perhaps you go with Cloudflare Pages to tap into their incredible global edge computing network. But honestly, they all serve the exact same overarching goal. They are completely equivalent alternative peers on this deployment journey. They are constantly competing to give you, the developer, the fastest, most managed, and most frictionless experience possible. You really can't go wrong starting out with any of these 3. But eventually, you might hit a wall, which brings us to a distinct fork in the road of your deployment strategy. We're transitioning directly from platforms that essentially do all the heavy lifting for you, straight into much heavier infrastructure territory. It's the classic engineering trade-off, right? The incredible convenience of a fully managed experience versus the total granular control of managing the environment yourself. Some applications are just too complex or have highly specific backend requirements, and a simple plug-and-play platform just can't support them anymore.
Which brings us to phase 3, the heavy lifters. This represents the scaled-up, highly customizable, heavy-duty side of the deployment landscape. You take this path when those out-of-the-box solutions are no longer enough, when your user traffic is scaling massively, and when you need absolute control over every single piece of your server environment. This is where you are configuring exactly how much memory your server has, the specific operating system it runs, and exactly how it handles internal network security protocols. Specifically for advanced infrastructure, we are talking about enterprise giants like AWS and foundational tools like Docker. AWS, Amazon Web Services, gives you access to enterprise-grade cloud infrastructure. It's literally like being handed the keys to a massive data center where you can spin up raw virtual computers completely on demand. Meanwhile, Docker solves that classic "it works on my machine" problem we talked about at the very beginning. It allows you to containerize your applications, perfectly packaging your code with all of its dependencies so it runs identically on your laptop, on a testing server, and live on AWS. Together, AWS and Docker represent the absolute bedrock of advanced back-end infrastructure.
Let's pull this all together and visualize this progression on a timeline. Take a look at this code's journey we've mapped out. It really is a brilliant evolution of complexity and scale. You start out simply on day one with your initial code prep, mastering the build process and production optimization to get those raw files ready. Then, by day two, you are deploying super fast with modern platforms, relying on managed services to get your site online in seconds. Finally, by day three, you're ascending to the absolute peak of complexity, managing your own advanced infrastructure and containers. It is a logical, highly structured path taking you from the basics all the way to absolute deployment mastery.
So which deployment path are you ready to conquer first? We've seen the essential preparation steps, the lightning-fast modern platforms, and the highly scalable heavy lifters. The deployment ecosystem is incredibly vast, for sure, but as we've seen today, it absolutely doesn't have to be intimidating when you break it down into these phases. So thinking about your next big project, take this framework, orient yourself within the landscape, and just get building. The internet is waiting to see what you create.